The flight was supposed to be just another routine trip for everyone on board. Passengers settled into their seats, some scrolling through their phones, others chatting quietly or staring out the window. But no one expected the shocking moment that was about to unfold between a flight attendant and a mother traveling with her child. As the plane cruised through the sky, a flight attendant in a crisp purple uniform moved down the aisle, checking on passengers. That's when she stopped next to a black mother, a well-dressed woman in a red blazer, sitting with her young child. At first, it seemed like a normal exchange, maybe a question about a seatbelt or a drink order. But in a matter of seconds, the conversation turned tense. Passengers nearby couldn't help but notice the sudden shift in tone. The mother, calm but firm, spoke up about something that didn't seem right. The flight attendant's expression hardened. Instead of handling the situation professionally, she did something no one could believe. She snapped. A collective gasp filled the cabin. Eyes widened, whispers spread like wildfire. The mother's face froze in disbelief, her child clinging to her side. The tension in the air was unbearable, but what happened next was even more shocking. Because what the flight attendant didn't realize was who this woman really was. She wasn't just another passenger. She wasn't just a mother. She was someone with the power to change everything in an instant. And just 3 minutes later, she did exactly that. What happened in those next few moments left the entire plane in silence. And by the time they landed, the flight attendant's career would never be the same. The mother took a deep breath, steadying herself as the weight of what just happened sank in. Her child, wide-eyed and scared, gripped her arm tightly. The entire row of passengers sat frozen, unsure of what to say or do. Some exchanged nervous glances, while others simply stared, waiting for what would come next. The flight attendant, still standing over her, looked unfazed, as if nothing out of the ordinary had just happened. She adjusted the pins on her uniform and straightened her posture, her expression cold and dismissive. It was clear she didn't expect any consequences. She thought she could walk away, continue her duties, and that would be the end of it. But she was wrong. The mother, still in shock, slowly turned her head, locking eyes with the flight attendant. "Did you really just do that?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. The surrounding passengers held their breath. The tension in the air was suffocating. The flight attendant scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Ma'am, if you don't comply with crew instructions, there will be consequences," she said flatly. She turned to leave, acting as if the situation was over, but she had no idea who she had just disrespected. The mother wasn't just any passenger. She was a high-powered executive, someone who had spent years making tough decisions, managing people, and handling crises. And in that moment, she knew exactly what needed to be done. But she didn't act right away. Instead, she sat back, observing, allowing the situation to unfold. Because what the flight attendant didn't realize was that her fate had already been decided. And in just a few minutes, the entire plane would know exactly who this woman was. The mother sat still, her heart pounding, but her mind sharper than ever. She wasn't the type to make a scene, not yet. She had learned long ago that power wasn't about reacting in the moment, but about choosing the right moment. And that moment was coming. Meanwhile, the passengers around her were growing uneasy. Some whispered to each other, exchanging glances as they processed what had just happened. A man across the aisle shook his head in disbelief. A woman in the row behind them leaned forward, as if to say something but held back. The mother could feel all of it, the weight of their silent support, their shock, their curiosity about what she would do next. The flight attendant, still acting as if nothing was wrong, continued walking down the aisle, checking overhead bins and talking to other passengers. It was almost insulting, the way she carried on so easily, as if she hadn't just crossed the line. But that was fine. Let her think she had won. The mother glanced at her child, whose small fingers were still gripping her sleeve. She gave a reassuring squeeze. "It's okay," she whispered. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. From a few rows up, another flight attendant, an older man with a softer demeanor, had seen everything. His eyes flickered with concern as he looked between the mother and his colleague. He hesitated, then quietly approached. "Ma'am," he said in a low voice, leaning in, "I just want to make sure you're all right." She looked up at him, studying his expression. He seemed genuine, but she could also see the conflict in his eyes. He knew how. The older flight attendant hesitated, shifting uncomfortably as if he wanted to say more but couldn't. His eyes darted toward his colleague, the one who had crossed the line, now casually chatting with another passenger as if nothing had happened. He sighed, then gave the mother a small nod before walking away. The mother knew exactly what was happening. He was stuck in the middle, torn between doing the right thing and keeping the peace among his crew. But she wasn't stuck. She knew what needed to be done. Just as she was about to reach for her phone, something unexpected happened. A voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We have a slight issue that needs to be addressed before we proceed with our journey." A murmur rippled through the cabin. Passengers straightened in their seats, wondering what was going on. The mother's fingers tightened around her phone. Was this about her? Was the flight attendant trying to flip the situation on her? Then, before she could react, the flight attendant who had wronged her walked back down the aisle, this time with a smug expression. "Looks like we might have a situation," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. The mother met her gaze, unflinching. "Is that so?" The flight attendant crossed her arms. "We take passenger conduct very seriously, ma'am," she said. "The captain has been made aware of the disturbance." A few passengers gasped. The mother felt her stomach tighten. They were trying to turn this on her, trying to make it look like she was the problem, but they had no idea who they were dealing with, because what they didn't know was that this wasn't just her fight anymore. Someone else had been watching, and they were about to speak up. Before the mother could respond, a voice from a few rows behind cut through the tension. "Excuse me," a man said firmly, standing up. He was dressed in a sharp suit, his expression serious. "I saw everything, and I think the captain needs to hear the full story before making any decisions." The flight attendant's confidence wavered for the first time. She turned toward the man, forcing a polite smile. "Sir, this is a private matter." "No, it's not," he interrupted. "Not when a paying passenger is being treated unfairly." He glanced at the mother. "Ma'am, would you like to explain what actually happened?" The mother sat up straighter, her voice calm but strong. "Yes, I would." She turned to the older flight attendant, the one who had checked on her earlier. "You saw what happened. You know the truth." The older man hesitated for only a moment before nodding. His face was tense, but there was a flicker of resolve in his eyes. "I did," he admitted. "And I think the captain should know exactly what I saw." A few more passengers started murmuring in agreement. Someone pulled out their phone, quietly recording. The pressure in the air shifted. The flight attendant who had started all of this looked around, her confidence crumbling as she realized the situation was slipping from her control. Then, before she could protest, the intercom crackled again. "Could the lead flight attendant please report to the cockpit immediately?" She stiffened, shooting one last glance at the mother before turning on her heel and marching toward the front of the plane. The moment she disappeared behind the curtain, the mother finally exhaled. Her child, still gripping her arm, looked up at her. "Are we in trouble?" She smiled gently and shook her head. "No, sweetheart. We're just making things right." Minutes passed before the flight attendant returned, her face pale, her steps slower. The older attendant followed behind her, standing by the mother's seat. Then, in a low, almost forced voice, the woman finally spoke. "Ma'am, I apologize for the way I handled the situation." It was clear she had been given a choice: acknowledge her actions or face something worse. The mother studied her, then nodded. "I accept your apology," she said simply. But that wasn't the end of it, because as the plane began its descent, the mother pulled out her phone and sent one quick email. By the time they landed, a message was waiting for the airline's executive team. And the next day, as she walked into her office, she knew the final decision had already been made. The flight attendant had underestimated her. She had assumed she was just another passenger, someone she could dismiss without consequence. But what she didn't know was that she had mistreated the wrong person, because this mother wasn't just any traveler. She was the CEO of the airline, and by the time the flight attendant clocked in for her next shift, her name was already off the roster.